Fire Emblem, as a franchise, is known for pushing players out of their comfort zone with its difficulty. While the game itself is not exactly beginner-friendly with its mechanics, the real reason this is the case is because of a franchise staple, permadeath. Inclusion of this mechanic makes the games immediately more difficult and changes the dynamic of how the player goes about completing a map in the various games. Permadeath was eventually taken out of the games as a mandatory mechanic, with the inclusion of casual mode in Fire Emblem 12. While this was overall a good thing, as it made the games more approachable for new players, which also happened to coincide with the rise of popularity that the franchise saw with Fire Emblem Awakening, at its heart, permadeath symbolized something in Fire Emblem that separated it from most other JRPGs: its difficulty. Despite this, many players experienced what the Fire Emblem games wanted more. While many games featured ridiculous difficulty options, these often came with a pretty striking caveat: they weren't fun. Like, at all. One look at the gameplay, the Lunatic Plus difficulty in Awakening is a pretty dead giveaway as to why this isn't fun. There are very difficult difficulties that force you to think even harder about your options and gameplay, and then there's Lunatic Plus that essentially requires a guide if you plan on making it further than the first level. Case in point, the extreme difficulties in Fire Emblem games often aren't actually good. Thus, the aforementioned players who are seeking a greater challenge often resort to alternative means, usually in the form of challenge runs. Challenge runs can range from things like don't use X units during the game, to fundamentally changing the game, like with reverse growth runs, which you can probably guess what those entail. Long story short, I decided to throw my hat in the ring and come up with my own kind of challenge run: Explosion Emblem, Fates Edition. The way this challenge works is deceptively simple. In Fire Emblem Fates, all units are forced to have the skill Self-Destruct. Self-Destruct is normally an enemy-exclusive skill that only the faceless enemies have access to. On top of this exclusivity, the skill only appears in one chapter in the entire game, which also happens to be the most difficult chapter in the entirety of Fates, Conquest Endgame. Normally the skill works as follows: if HP is less than 50%, self-destruct and damage enemies and barriers within 2 spaces. So basically, I decided to take this annoying skill from only one chapter in the game and make it as suffocatingly difficult as humanly possible throughout the entire game. The skill works about how you would expect it to on playable units. If their HP gets below half, they explode, harming allies around them. Side note, in truth, getting this to work on playable units was a lot more annoying than just cheating it on every playable unit. Special thanks to the Fire Emblem University Discord server for basically making this challenge run possible. And yeah, that's all there really is to it. Long preamble out of the way, we can get started on the run. Okay, first things first, deciding on the route I want to take for the challenge run. There's the previously mentioned Conquest route, which is easily the hardest of the 3. You don't have access to money or grinding, at least not without DLC. It's also the best route normally gameplay-wise, hands down, but that's beside the point for now. There's Birthright, considered the easiest of the 3. Important to note for those unaware of the history behind Fates, this was done on purpose. Conquest was made for more experienced players, while Birthright was made for new ones. It also takes a lot of inspiration from Partner Baby's first Fire Emblem game, Fire Emblem Awakening, and it shows. That's not to say that's a bad thing. In fact, I love Awakening, consider Birthright to be solid in its own right. Yeah. Lastly, there's the golden route, Revelations, considered to be the middle ground in terms of difficulty between the two, though definitely leaning more towards Birthright in terms of difficulty. Because of this, I decided to go with Revelations, as I think it's a nice balance of difficulty and annoying gimmicks to make the run more interesting. Also, on a personal note, I've only really played Revelations one time, so it's the most unfamiliar game to me out of the 3, which I suppose is a good thing. Alright, the rules for this challenge have already been laid out, as in my units fucking explode sometimes, but aside from that I figured I'd also mention that I'm allowing myself to grind when I want to, and I'm allowing myself access to DLC and path bonus items, which certainly help. Lastly, I'll be playing on Lunatic difficulty, and playing with Classic mode on, which keeps the permadeath mechanic mentioned at the beginning of the video. This means if a unit explodes, they are gone for good, including Corrin, as exploding does not result in a game over. Alright, let's get started. Immediately, the game starts with Corrin taking force damage against a tutorial enemy, followed by a prompt where the player is forced to attack the enemy again. This is programmed to leave the player below half HP, which isn't a very good start at all, is it? Immediately I'm assuming I'm going to have to pull some strings to make this challenge possible at all, but then, with the complete Hail Mary out of nowhere, Sakura comes and healed me. The reason I didn't explode is as follows. I, and by I mean the neato people over in the Fire Emblem University Discord, altered the game so that units don't explode until the start of player phase. This was done to better replicate how the skill works on enemies. In other words, to check to see if I go kabloom or not doesn't happen until I regain access to my units, which is after allied turns like Sakura and her epic healing. This is very important to know going forward. Anyway, the rest of this tutorial chapter goes smoothly and I finish with no issues. After a brief introductory chapter, we wake up in the kingdom of Nor and are greeted with our retainers, Jacob, Felicia, Flora, and Gunter. The only ones we really care about right now are Gunter, the makeshift Jagan of Fates, and, because we were female, Jacob. Unit-wise, Jacob and Felicia are generally pretty similar, with Jacob favoring defense and strength over Felicia's resistance and magic. For a reason I'll get into a little bit, I would actually say Felicia is the better of the two for these first few chapters. I'll speak more on Jacob and Gunter's viability in Chapter 2. We can't chat with our retainers for long, as we're summoned by our eldest brother Xander for a sparring session. After beating our ass for years, it's time for him to finally throw the match, so that we can leave the castle we've been confined in since childhood. Well, that's what I would say were it not for the challenge run I'm currently doing. Turns out, Xander wants to take our training seriously, even if it means we violently explode because of it. The second level also serves as a tutorial of sorts, both for Dragon Veins, basically map-specific gimmicks, and to a lesser extent, healing. The latter is what we're concerned with this challenge, however, as we hit our first roadblock of the game. The game is programmed for you to have a combat encounter with Xander in order for him to use the Dragon Vein he's camping over. When you reach a certain level of health, Xander will use the Dragon Vein, which spawns a healing tile for, us to heal on. Problem is, no matter what happens, Xander will do 11 damage to us, which brings us below half our maximum HP. As you can guess, this basically screws us. As far as I'm aware, there's no way to prevent this from happening. This basically forces me to turn the self-destruct skill off in order to progress, which I suppose would normally mean the end of the challenge. But I don't really care about that, so we're going to continue anyway. After turning the skill off, we proceed to Chapter 2 with ease, as you have to actively try to lose this chapter in order to get a game over. After this is over and we prove our absolute supreme superiority over Xander, we get a little more bonding time with our Norian siblings. You got Xander, Leo, Elise, and Camilla. They're cool, I guess. In terms of viability, we won't be getting access to any of them for quite a while, so yeah, I'll cover them when we get there. Here we learn that our father, the King of Nor, Ganon, wants an audience with us. We set out to meet him, but not before getting the intense, insane lore drop that Corrin likes animals, which makes her more endearing to the player. Character relatability acquired. Upon meeting our clearly not evil father Ganon, we're clearly given a not evil sword by him and are tasked with a lighthearted slaughtering of prisoners of war. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce you to Chapter 2, the first real test of will. Thankfully, we aren't alone, as Gunter and Jacob are here to suffer with us. Our task? Kill all the prisoners who have been armed with weapons themselves. Should be easy enough though. We are a princess of Nor, right? No. First, let's start with what we have at our disposal. You got Corrin herself, who hasn't really gotten a chance to shine as their own unit yet due to the prior chapters being more tutorial-oriented. That said, this isn't a great showcase for what Corrin can really do, as we don't have access to a Dragon Stone yet. That and we're level 2. As of right now, Corrin can, slap enemies with this ridiculous-looking sword. So that's good. That said, she, like the other two units we have, will be imperative to getting us out of here alive. Next, we have Gunter, the current most powerful of the three. Right now, he hits things pretty hard and can take a decent few hits, which is essential. Lastly, there's Jacob, who has access to healing and daggers. Healing is very nice, considering the tight HP requirements we have at all times now, and daggers are an amazing weapon type. While on the weaker side, they're 1-2 range and debuff the enemy when they make contact with them, which will also be very important. I'll get into their personal skills next chapter, as they're centered around the pair-up system, which we don't have access to in this chapter, unfortunately. That said, Jacob does have the skill Gentlehome. I think that's how you pronounce that. This reduces damage from enemies by 2 for all female allies within 2 spaces. This is great for Corrin, as we need whatever we can get in these early chapters. That said, I mentioned that Felicia would be a little better in this chapter, and this skill's the reason why. Or rather, the gender-swapped version of the skill she gets access to, Demoiselle. This does the same effect, but for male allies. This will be great for both Gunter, and in the case of using Felicia, male Corrin, as they both get access to the slight extra bulk. Either way, Jacob is going to help us win this fight. Lastly, we have the Dragon Vein, that opens up a patch of healing tiles for us and the enemy to have access to, although we're closer to it and take greater advantage of its healing abilities. Another thing that I learned is that the check to see if you explode or not happens after checks that involve you healing any amount of HP at the start of player phase, which is incredibly useful. Our opponent are 3 samurai, one of which has the 1-2 ranged Kodachi weapon, an Oni Savage, along with Rinka and Kaze. On Lunatic, Kaze has the more damaging Iron Shuriken, which debuffs much like Jacob's dagger, and Rinka has access to the 1-2 ranged Throwing Club, making her much harder to deal with. She also has her personal skill Fiery Blood, which allows her to do more damage when she's below maximum HP. I try a bunch of approaches to the level, going about it in a number of different ways, all of which fail. The first attempt I try and focus on Rinka's side first, and then move to take care of Kaze's side. It is here that I learn of a dire truth, the existence of chain reaction explosions. God damn. Oh my god, it's like a chain reaction. Oh, that's that. Out of playable units. Well, I guess let's try that again. When a player unit dies, they do damage to surrounding allies. If this damage also brings said allies below half HP, they too will explode. This can chain multiple times and result in multiple explosions, meaning that turtling up all your units, widely considered one of the better strategies in Fire Emblem games, will often have the dire result of multiple units dying. As you'll see, I didn't quite get the memo of this even later in the run. My other strategies included trying to take on both sides at the same time in the middle, trying to solo focus on Rinka at first again, baiting Kaze's side with Korin at first so it would take them longer to get to Gunter and Jacob, etc. I eventually settled on this formation, which baited the enemy's side in a very fortunate position for myself. I can mow down all of Kaze's half, then solely focus on Rinka's. Fortunately, the first attempt at this failed with Jacob dying at some point, and Gunter missing an 80% chance hit to close out the level. The annoying thing was, when trying to replicate the formation I did to achieve this scenario, the AI would randomly do different movements, ruining the whole plan. Finally though, this strategy works out and I somehow managed to keep all 3 of my units alive, which is important as it means I get access to all 3 of them in the next chapter. After refusing to senselessly murder defenseless prisoners, because murder is bad or whatever, our brother Leo, the goat, manages to clutch us out of the situation despite our direct violation of an order from our not evil father. Because of Leo, we were able to free the prisoners, well, the ones who survived anyway, without Ganon knowing. And yeah, that's the end of chapter 2. Such a hectic start and only 2 chapters in. To atone for our crime of directly disobeying our king, we're tasked with surveying / slaughtering an abandoned fort full of Oshins. Enter chapter 3. Aside from a mishap where I overestimate Jacob's defense against an enemy archer on my first attempt and lose the chapter to that, this chapter overall isn't too bad. Hans, our allied partner, goes off and kills himself to a squad of enemies to the northeast, which leaves us to take care of the entire map. Thankfully, this is simply a siege map, so all we really must do is make it to the boss and defeat them. The beginning goes very smoothly as I cautiously take out the western half of the map, which only consists of a few enemies. The real challenge comes when crossing this bridge we make through a dragon vein. I start by attacking this archer with Gunter, which more or less seals his fate. We won't be needing him for the next few chapters anyway, so this is fine. And he blocks the path of this archer to Korin, who would be currently exposed to multiple enemies. After this, it's just a matter of taking out the samurai with Korin, which fills our guard meter, and then handling the remaining 2 archers. In this chapter we finally have access to para, which is an essential mechanic in this game. When our guard meter is full like it is here, we basically guarantee that we will not be taking damage on our next hit from an enemy, which as you can guess is really nice for baiting in units without worrying about our health. Para also gives stat bonuses to allied units in the para, and in the case of Gunter and Jacob, extra bonuses are applied when they are the support partner. Gunter gives extra hit rate and damage, which is nice, but Jacob is really where it's at, giving higher evasion rates from hits as well as reducing enemy damage by 3. Because of this, Jacob's a great para bot, though he can still dish out nice damage and debuffs, which makes him very formidable. After taking care of the 2 archers, we have another couple archers to worry about, but Jacob and the support bonuses from Korin make short work of them. Then this spawns a trio of Pegasus Knights, but they're complete pushovers, and Korin handles them with Jacob's support, only taking 2 damage from each of them. The nice thing about this map and maps going forward is access to a fort, which essentially grants us infinite healing. While we could just heal Korin with Jacob, Jacob cannot heal himself, so this fort is basically our saving grace against the upcoming boss we have to deal with, Omozu. Omozu boasts crazy speed and evasion, making it basically a crapshoot if you can take him down or not, at least on lunatic difficulty. He's also a ninja, meaning he has access to debuffs via his Iron Shuriken, which makes taking him out all the more annoying. I start by waiting in front of him, as if I attack with Korin, she'll fall below half HP upon its retaliation. Korin thankfully hits a 55 for 9 damage, but takes 10 damage in return. An annoying thing found in most bosses and Fates is that they're usually on top of a siege location of some kind, which can grant them more evasion, defense, and worse for us, HP. This means we can't just chip most bosses' health down and then run away and heal, as they themselves will recover the damage given to them. Because of this, I have to go all in and take Ozumo out now. Jacob normally takes too much damage from Omozu to normally consider using him against this boss, but in a couple hits I have access to the aforementioned guard meter, ensuring Jacob's safety. Because of this, I can safely wait for the boss's range like I did with Korin, getting off another 6 damage and debuffing Omozu, while only taking 8 damage in return. I can then perfectly do 9 damage to the boss with Jacob, only needing to hit another 70, which he thankfully does. After glancing at the northeast section of the map one last time, I conclude that the potential experience gained from taking them on is not worth it and finish the chapter. That's chapter 3 done relatively smooth. A whole bunch of plot stuff happens that isn't really super worth covering. Just know Hans betrays us, shocker, and Gunther dies. Well, I could have sworn he exploded earlier, but okay. After that we fall into a pit, and a character I forgot to mention earlier turns into a magic fish and saves us. We then get knocked out by Hoshino. Yeah. A whole bunch of other plot stuff happens. TLDR, we're actually Hoshidan nobility and have been lied to our whole life. Bummer. Anyway, we have to go kill some Faceless now. Thankfully, unlike the other chapters, there isn't really much to talk about here, as our new eldest brother Ryoma basically solos the map for us. All that's left after his insane carnage against these poor defenseless Faceless is a group on the mountain. The boss is kinda scary as he has access to debuffs, but we can actually take out each of these 4 individually, so it's no big deal. Well, aside from this attempt where I guess I forgot to heal Corrin or something because she explodes. But never mind that, let's get to the real attempt. And yeah, Corrin baits the enemies and Kaze finishes them off with the shurikens. Nothing much else to this map, thankfully. I could get into the nitty gritty of how I took them out, but really it's nothing worth mentioning. This game does give us access to Kaze and Rinka, and to avoid giving a detailed synopsis of every unit we get access to, just know that Kaze is amazing because he's a ninja, and Rinka's complete trash. This is the current makeshift tier list I decided to make. It is definitive and I will not be taking questions. We were reunited with more of our blood siblings, which is cool, I guess, and eventually meet Azura, who is important because, I mean, look at her. You can't tell me a character who looks like that isn't gonna be lastingly important in some way. Unlike pitiful Gunther down there. Get it? Pitiful? Because he fell in a pit? Yeah. Oh boy, Chapter 5. Our new mom, who is also the queen, wants to tell everybody in Hoshido that we're in fact not here to kill everyone. Our sword then proceeds to kill a bunch of people because it explodes, including our mom. Guess the gang Glory, or whatever, wanted a piece of the explosion action too. We then rage out real hard and turn into a dragon, and now we must kill. And by kill, I mean give up. Seriously, I don't think this chapter is possible with this rule set. From what I can tell, no matter what, you're gonna fall below half HP on Corrin, at least. Unless I'm just bad or missing something, this is the way it is. There is the possibility for Ryoma to actually defeat the boss and handle the lower half of the level for us, but it just didn't happen. Believe me, I tried. And I know it's possible too, the internet says so, and I'm pretty sure I've seen it happen before myself. I tried for what felt like at least an hour, just resetting the level over and over again, just to get this to work, and it just didn't. At first I tried using save states, but then it turns out the RNG is determined right when you start the level. I then tried doing actual resets, but if Ryoma got hit once, he would explode. I think the first few hits of the boss is programmed to miss, but then there's a 72% chance if he's gonna hit Ryoma or not, so yeah. I then tried at least taking the self-destruct skill off of Ryoma to see if he could do it, but still after dozens of attempts, nothing. I don't know if I'm just unlucky or what, but I just couldn't get this to happen even though I know it can. I guess it's less that I got unlucky and more that in all my attempts I didn't get really lucky. Oh well, I don't even want to talk about how I beat the level in detail. I decided to keep self-destructing all my units, but through FE Twiddler, I changed difficulty to normal, which had the effect of making the game way too easy. I turned it right back to lunatic mode after this for the record. Whatever, I don't want to talk about it for this chapter anyway. Azura sings for us and all is well. We now have access to a Dragon Stone, which is really good. It basically makes us one of the tankiest units in the game. Also there's this epic sword or whatever, and it chooses us as its wielder because we're the main character. Norians are at the border, and soon it'll be time to make a fateful decision on who to side with. Our birth family, or the family we grew up with. Well, actually I already mentioned going with our relations, so never mind. Moment ruined. We finally arrive and confront the Norian army. Though as mentioned, I actually plan on telling both sides to fuck off and joining Smash, the real golden route. After deciding to play what is, by official means, lost media at this point, and totally paying $20 for it, we finally get to Revelations. Also, while I didn't mention it before, up until now I didn't count deaths as permanent and reset if someone died, just to make the early chapters actually doable. That changes now, and every death matters. This chapter is actually really easy. It just involves killing a couple of bosses that aren't Ryoma or Xander, thank god. Corrin pairs up with Jacob, uses a Dragon Vein, it gets sung by Azura to take out the right side, and then the left side pursues us and they all die to our newfound dragon powers. Oh yeah, Azura. Forgot to even talk about her in Sakura in Chapter 5 because f*** that chapter. Sakura is a healer. Anyway, Azura is an amazing unit because she's a dancer. Dancers are always useful as they give other units another turn. She's also incredibly frail and has like 4 HP, so she doesn't do any fighting. Keeping her safe is important. After pissing both nations and families off by not siding with either, we dip the hell out of there with Azura and Jacob being our only allies. And for that, they're real ones. Before we start anything, important to note is now we have access to My Castle and DLC. My Castle is great for a number of reasons, such as getting supports, which we now have access to, and buying items and the like. Having access to supports is great as it makes our pair-ups more potent. Lastly, through My Castle, we get access to path bonuses, which basically gives us a bunch of nice stuff. We get 2 Dragon Herbs, which increases all stats by 1 for a unit, which I have Corn snored up immediately. 2 pairs of Boots, which increase the amount of movement we can travel. I have Azura devour these. And access to the incredibly useful classes, Dreadfighter and Darkflyer. While I don't use these right away, just know they're really good and give much needed stats to some weaker units. Having access, totally legally by the way, to all the DLC gives us 2 gifts from Anna's DLC. The first gives us access to the gender exclusive classes Witch and Ballistician, with the catch being we can only choose one of the 2. Witches are crazy good, but I figure the utility of Ballistician and the AoE damage it gives is overall more useful. From the other Anna DLC we get Paragon, which gives more experience to a unit, gave this to Azura, and another pair of boots, which I gave to Corrin. Sorry, Jacob. I mentioned My Castle also lets us buy things, which means we can also buy tonics. Tonics are temporary buffs to a unit for a chapter and are pretty cheap. Because of that, I make use of them a lot. After realizing how screwed we are for not choosing to ally with Nora or Hoshido, Corrin, Azura, and Jacob decide to jump into a pit and end it all. Thankfully, this pit actually transports them to the kingdom of Vala, who are the real evil ones pulling all the strings behind the war between Nora and Hoshido. Upon getting to Vala, we are immediately forced to fight for our lives. This chapter introduces us to a Revelation staple. Basically, every map has a gimmick of some kind. This one is that there's pseudo-fog of war in this chapter, which is only a little annoying, honestly. Also, there are these warp spots in the darkness that teleport you back a little bit if you step on them, but they're pretty easy to tell if they're a trap or not. Corrin basically solos this chapter with their new Dragonstone, which as mentioned is really good, especially early game. The Dragonstone combined with the defense tonic basically means most enemies can't even scratch us. Even despite this, I managed to use the sword for a lot of the map, which gives it some good weapon experience. Just goes to show how tanky Corrin is in these early chapters. We're able to feed some kills to Jacob too, which is nice. Eventually we get access to Gunter in this chapter. Yeah, remember him? Turns out he didn't actually die, because he also fell in the pit down to Vala. So he's here with us now. Great! Kinda. Now that we're a little further in the game, it turns out Gunter kinda sucks. Hard. For one, he doesn't have access to supports in this route, which immediately makes him much worse. And also, at least on Lunatic difficulty, he gets bodied by most enemies. He's nice to have, I guess, but the old man is bound for the bench once we get access to more units. He's definitely at the bottom of the tier list. This map is very easy, so there isn't much to talk about with it. We get the large amount of treasure hidden in the map, which always helps, and pretty easily take out the Berserker boss, completing the map. After getting kicked out of Vala, our small group decides that the best course of action is to take over a Hoshidan fort in an effort to convince them to join our cause. Brilliant. This map also offers little in the sense of difficulty, just more of Corrin taking the whole map. I try to feed as much experience as I can to Jacob, but aside from that, this is basically another Corrin solo. I also bought Corrin a Kodachi before entering this level, so she now has access to a 2-range weapon, further increasing the amount she can carry me. Corrin effortlessly takes out Saizo, Orochi, and the chapter boss, Yukimura. They're all so easy, it's not really worth talking about. After failing to convince the Hoshins that we are right through force, Saizo decided that the best course of action is to explode, taking us all out. He's stopped, however, by Sakura and his brother Kaze. Sorry, my guy, maybe I'll let you explode some other time. Sakura requests to join us because we're the main character, and Kaze, along with her 2 retainers, Tsubaki and Hana, join her. Access to more units is always welcome, though there is just one problem. Most of these units suck. That goes for pretty much all units who aren't royals in Revelations. The units you get access to, which there are a lot of, are usually not worth investing in. And that's kind of the case with this bunch we just got. Sakura's another healer, which is good, and Kaze is still a ninja, which is nice, though he does very little damage. But Hana and Tsubaki are pretty mid. Oh well, what could possibly go wrong with having them in my army? I figure I should grind up my new units a little, so I decided to complete the first paralog, where we gain access to Mozu. Mozu has access to the skill aptitude, so she has the potential to be very good despite starting out very weak. Despite this, I don't think she's very worth investing in, considering the amazing units we're going to get access to down the line. Still, this is a good opportunity for experience, like I said. Before starting the chapter, I decided to make good use of some of the resources I have access to via the DLC and path bonuses, and make Kaze a Dreadfighter, which immediately makes him a much better unit with the stats the class gives. I also then decided to make Jacob a Ballistician, as I figure Sakura now has the healing covered. The chapter is really easy, it just takes some patience to beat normally. Because of this, absolutely nothing goes wrong. That's not good. Crap. I mess up and get Sakura in range of a Faceless, with my whole army surrounding her. Great. By the time I realize this, it's already too late, as the only unit who could get in the way of the Faceless is Mozu, who's even weaker than Sakura. Oh, this guy reaches her? Shit. That's really bad. No, if I put Mozu there, it's gonna cause a chain reaction of explosions. That'd be really bad. Ugh, I just have to lose Sakura. Damn it, that's my healer. Dodge. Please dodge. Oh, okay. Think.
Get off!
It's on me!
Think. Ah! Who else died? Who was that?
The thing's insane. It just blew itself up.
Tsubaki, no! Oh my god. I really thought I'd only be losing one unit, huh? Chain reactions strike again, and Tsubaki also explodes with his liege. This is not only bad for Tsubaki, but the rest of my army as they also lose more HP. I'm honestly not sure why a bunch of my other units didn't explode as well, but right now I'm not complaining. Because of this conundrum, and the fact that I no longer have a healer, I have to use healing items to get back to over half HP on a bunch of my units. I immediately decide that Corrin is the most important to keep alive, and use both her turn and Azura's dance to ensure that she's over half HP with vulneraries. This, however, means that Jacob and Gunter cannot heal themselves to over half HP, even with healing items. You can imagine what happens because of that. I just lost so many people. Oh. From one little mistake. So much carnage. Oh my god. I suffered pretty bad losses, but surely it couldn't get worse. I didn't realize he'd be doing that much damage. No, he's gonna explode. Oh no. Don't explode. I did not think he'd be doing that much damage to himself. Yeah, I got nothing. I just messed up this chapter. Oh my god, this went so horribly. What, does these guys just do more? Oh no, it's because he had the Gunter pair up, that's why. I now only have access to Corrin, Azura, Mozu, and Hana, two of which I just got done saying aren't really worth investing in. Tough luck though, they're all I have right now. I make the decision to promote Hana to a Dread Fighter just so she can have access to a few more stats. I then focus on only giving experience to her for the rest of the level. Yeah, the next level is going to be fun. After losing half our army to Faceless, our squad of 4 people decide it's best to continue our quest to save the world by heading to the neutral nation of Izumo. We are however confronted by Faceless, and PTSD from our last encounter with them results in our army killing them on sight. Turns out they were an illusion, and we accidentally slaughter some innocent people from the Wind Tribe. Oops. Instead of doing a hit and run, we decide the guilt we would carry for the rest of our lives is too much to bear, and we confront the Wind Tribe to explain what happened. Because the Wind Tribe's chief is a little quirky, he pardons our crimes, with the caveat being that we must slaughter more of his people. Okay, cool. Sounds good. We get access to Rinka this chapter, but as mentioned, she sucks, so who cares? She comes with E rank and axes and routinely does 0 damage to the enemies in this chapter. Because of that, we really only have Corrin, Hana, and Azura to rely on. Welcome to Chapter 9, Fuga's Wild Ride. Of the 2 Wind Tribe chapters to choose from between Conquest and Birthright, it's only natural that Revelations would go with the one that has the more annoying gimmick between the 2. This chapter features constant strong winds, which push the player up and down the map without their consent and should probably be cancelled because of it. This annoying ass mechanic makes the level very hard to play around, and eventually results in a position where Azura is basically forced to be killed. Great, another amazing unit dead. You should be able to survive. Oh no, she's gonna explode! I didn't even think about that. Oh, I forgot the freaking challenge run I was doing. Oh, well, there goes Azura. I don't think there's a way out of that. I messed up. Now this is basically a Hana Corrin solo, though honestly Hana kinda proves her worth here. This is probably due mostly to the Dreadfighter class I gave her. With Corrin as a backpack, Hana more or less solos the map and gets some great experience from it. Moze and Rinka may as well not showed up, as they can't do anything to the enemy and are constantly in danger of dying. This map also gives some very nice treasure. Little advice, only get the 2 right chests on this map if you don't have Kaze like me. You get the dual katana, which is very useful, and 10,000 gold. Thank you. The rest of this map goes very well, with Fuga being the last enemy to deal with. Fuga seems scary, carrying the skills Seal Strength, Vantage, and Duelist Blow, but he has one fatal flaw. He can't move and is 1 range only. This means I can camp him at 2 range with Hana until he's ready to die by Corrin's hands. Easy. After killing more of Fuga's people, we are given the reward of his child, conscripted into our army against his will. Dope. Idle's a decent unit and comes at level 9, which is nice. I immediately give him the Ebon Wing, turning him into a Dark Flyer, which gives him some extra stats, which is great. Oh boy, the shoveling map. If you're guessing what that means, you would probably be correct. In this map, the gimmick is that you shovel snow. That's it. It's basically just more annoying, easier to deal with fog of war. Awesome. The story isn't much different from what you would expect. We get to Izumo and are immediately flashbanged with a snow bomb. The US military should really investigate that as a realistic and very useful weapon of mass destruction. This level also has enemies that carry a plethora of useful items that we can steal from their corpses, which makes killing each and every one of them worth doing. This drastically raises the playtime of this chapter as we now have to shovel even more snow and kill every enemy if we want to be optimal. Seeing as I have access to very few units at this point, I decided now would be a good time to actually try and raise Rinka. Not so much to use her, but because she gives good defense support when she's paired up with somebody, which is nice. I can also force her to marry and copulate with this child in order to get more child fighters in my army. If you don't know what the hell I'm talking about, I'm not going to elaborate. Nothing much to say here. I slowly grind up Rinka to level 10 so that she can promote, meaning her pair-up will be even stronger. I effortlessly take out the boss and call it a day. If there were ever an example of a filler chapter, it would be this one. After beating the chapter, we rescue our brother Takumi, recruiting both him and his 2 retainers. I certainly won't complain about getting new units, especially Takumi, who is very strong. After seeing a distress signal that specifically warns us not to come near, we purposely risk our lives to investigate, to potentially maybe save a couple of people. Right at the start of this chapter, we can fly over to some allied units with Hayato, recruiting them. This includes Saizo, who kinda sucks despite being a ninja, Orochi, who also kinda sucks, and Reina, who's a pre-promoted unit and is very good, at least right now. She's also another flyer, which is always nice to have. This chapter's annoying ass gimmick is the same one in Birthright, where if we step on certain tiles on the map, we trigger spike traps that hurt us every turn. This is naturally scary when we're trying to manage our HP at all times, but thankfully there are dragon veins that get rid of these traps. They constantly appear again when stepping on certain tiles, but I'll take what I can get. At least this isn't the Conquest Mokushi level. Having access to Takumi and Reina is also very nice, as they make dealing with this map much more manageable. Having a healer would have been very nice for this chapter, which I could have had if I made Corrin a Hoshiden noble. Instead, I foolishly made them a Nor noble, which are normally a little better in my opinion. Oops. I have to deal with master ninjas in this chapter, which are very annoying to deal with. Aside from debuffing and being surprisingly bulky, they also have crazy speed, which means I can't double them, and they're also pretty strong, so I can't just attack them willy-nilly. Banging them in is also not really an option, as they have Poison Strike. Poison Strike, which does extra damage at the end of combat, along with the normal damage, is too much for any of my units to handle. Thankfully, Poison Strike only works on the user's phase, so attacking the one-player phase is the way to go. This often puts me in range of other units, which is scary, but with some perseverance I managed to slowly comb through the level without losing anyone. Towards the end there are some ninjas who I can't just effortlessly attack on player phase, and I'm basically required to bait them in. Thankfully, Takumi with an offensive pair up with Corrin is enough to kill them before they can attack me twice. Killing an enemy also prevents them from using Poison Strike, which makes this safe to do. Using the dual katana we got from chapter 9, we can invert the weapon triangle advantage that shurikens have on swords to get some good damage off with Corrin on the boss, and then finish them off with Takumi for an easy kill. That's chapter 11 done. Stressful, but overall not too bad. After chapter 11, we save Kagero, who's actually a pretty good unit. I promote her right away into a master ninja and decide that she should get married to Takumi. Earlier I promised Oboro that she could marry him, but I changed my mind. I'm sure she won't mind at all. We hear from Kagero that Ryoma's in a place called Chev. Ryoma's broken, so we make our way to him as soon as physically possible to recruit him. Along the way, however, we're stopped by Flora and Camilla, who are tasked with killing us by Ganon. Monotony ensues. I feel like a broken record at this point, but yeah, this chapter goes pretty smoothly. I don't lose anybody. The gimmick here is that we have to hold off the enemy units until a dragon vein appears, and then we can make a stand against Camilla and Flora. This level features basically constant reinforcements, so the task at hand really relies on managing them, and finishing the level quickly so as to not get overwhelmed. The boat holding Camilla and Flora to the northeast looks intimidating, but really all you have to do is bait Camilla with Corrin to get her out of the way, and then use my flyers to snipe Flora before any of the promoted units around her can even attempt to hurt us. There's also Selena and Baruka at the southern end of the map, but we can just ignore them if we want to. There's also a Berserker located there with a Master Seal, but at this point I'm not really confident any of my units can safely bait him in without losing half their health, so I decided not to bother with it. Other than that, there isn't really much to say here. I carefully make my way to the boat holding Camilla and Flora, and then get the kill on Flora with a duo assassination procedure between Takumi and Reina. Easy, let's get the hell out of here. After defeating Camilla, she tells us to kill her, but we look at her stats and force her to fight for us instead. Good call, honestly. Finally, we have access to a Norian Royal, which is nice. Camilla's another flyer, which is great, and she has some nice stats too. We also get her retainers, Selena and Baruka, who suffer from the usual case of being mid-revolution units, that while fine, to use I guess, are hard to make an argument for using over someone like Camilla, for instance. Baruka's another flyer though, which is cool. We make our way to Cirkenzia, where Vala soldiers are faffing about and destroying the town for no good reason. Xandra and Ryoma are quick to say that the other respective armies are the ones to blame for the destruction, not taking 5 seconds to realize that the town is literally being destroyed before their eyes by not the enemy units. We find ourselves in the middle, tasked with defeating the Valide army. There isn't really a gimmick in this level, which is a nice change of pace. Instead, you can choose to take on either army's respective side to access the middle of the level, where the real boss is, or you can quickly fly over to the middle, making the level much easier. Problem is, the latter option is pretty risky when the threat of instant detonation is a constant worry. Because of this, I decided taking on the Hoshidan army is the best course of action, as to give access to a dragon vein that allows me to open up the level to a considerable degree. There's also blocks we can use to seal off certain paths that reinforcements can use to get to us, which is useful. Lastly, we get access to the 2 transformation units in this game, Keaton and Kaden. Both are solid. The level starts off strong, with me forgetting how garbage Rinka is and overestimating her bulk against an enemy outlaw, getting her to unceremoniously pop into the wind. Oh shit. Music's weird. Yeah, she was really that weak. I was not expecting her to be that. There she goes. Is he in danger? Oh shit. Don't tell me Hayato's gonna die. I think he's just like, well, I can't use him anymore this map. I don't think he's dead. I've neglected to mention it up until this point, but there's another quirk with this challenge run that's very detrimental. Explosion nullification. At least that's what I'm gonna call it. When a paired up unit explodes, the other unit in the pair up doesn't die per se, but instead gets into this unusable state where I cannot control them anymore. They quite literally aren't on the map anymore, but they also haven't died, so I'll get access to them again when the chapter's over. This is a problem though, as in this case, Rinko is paired up with Hayato, who's one of my better units and my only mage. That sucks, as I effectively cannot use him for the rest of the chapter. I naturally learned from my mistake by soon after overestimating Camilla's bulk against a group of enemies, making her explode. That's not enough to explode, right?
Aww.
Shouldn't be. It was. Oh, shit. Fuck. Well, I just lost Camilla. And Corrin is now unusable for the rest of the chapter. Crap. Not only did I lose one of my better units in the game, but Corrin was also the one paired up with Camilla, meaning I can't use them for the rest of the chapter, which is, really not good. Corrin is my main tank thanks to her Dragonstone, and I rely on her frequently to bait in stronger enemies as she has enough bulk to not fall below half HP when attacked by them. Now, I'm down 4 of my best units for this chapter, with one of them being my only answer to promoted units. Namely, there's a general with hefty stats and I'm fairly certain I can't bait him effectively. Realizing that my chances of taking down Hoshidan side are dwindling by the second, I take a gamble and send Reina with a Baruka's strength and death pair up to handle the middle section of the level. She takes only 12 damage from these enemy cavaliers, she won't fall below half if I take out one of them with her bow. Health back, very good. 16, she's better. I didn't think it'd do, oh I guess because it was a weapon disadvantage, okay. Wow, things could be going better. think that's not... I don't even have a flyer anymore. I have to go through this normally. Ah, shit. I think it's over. I just messed this level up way too hard. I'm just on a hot streak of trash gameplay, aren't I? Turns out I forgot that weapon advantage is a thing. Reina only took 12 damage to the enemy calves with her Naginata against their swords, meaning she only took 12 because she had weapon advantage. Also, the Iron Naginata she was using grants +1 def and res, further subtracting from the amount the calves were doing to her. I unfortunately didn't realize that by switching to the bow, a green weapon in this game's weapon advantage system, meaning it's effectively like an axe, was actually putting Reina in danger here. I obviously switched to the bow so that she wouldn't take counter damage from the first Cavalier, but the loss of 1 death from her Naginata and now being at weapon disadvantage against the other calf's sword meant she was taking 16 damage instead of 12, which is over half her HP. Goodbye, Reina. I've messed up in this run before, well with the Sakura and Kaze faceless incidents. This was 3 pretty major screw-ups in a row. This level infinitely more difficult to actually complete. In desperation, and due to the fact that I no longer have any flyers available to me, I attempt my original plan of taking out the Hoshiden Wing and blitzing the boss just to complete the chapter. The Hoshiden Wing is full of scary promoted units, including Master Ninjas, so this is no small ask. I handle the southeastern area of the map with relative ease with my remaining units, but then get to this enemy choke point that's basically designed around debating in multiple enemies. This is scary as the remaining units I have are all pretty squishy. Now helping is the fact that enemy reinforcements from both sides of the map are spawning and will soon start closing in on me sooner rather than later. I'm also running out of healing items, so I can only take so many hits. Thankfully, the current reinforcements I have to deal with are a small blessing in disguise, as I managed to build up Hana's guard meter in the process of killing them. I can now safely bait in the enemies holding this choke point and progress just a little bit further. Eventually though, I hit a wall. 2 Master Ninjas I have to deal with, both very fast and still surprisingly bulky. I simply have no way of safely killing these 2, at least not without making sacrifices with my already scarce pool of remaining units. I start by stacking Oboro, just to get some good damage off on the first Master Ninja. I finished him off with Takumi, who's my last remaining solid damage dealer. That said, he isn't very bulky. In the last ditch effort to take out the Hoshiden side, I sent Takumi with a soon-to-be full guard meter to challenge the Master Ninja, doing solid damage to them, but this is too little, too late. Master Ninjas also have access to swords for some reason, so the ninja can switch to this sword in a range where Takumi can't even fight back, and does extra damage to the aforementioned triangle advantage he now has. Takumi leaves this world with one last parting gift to my allies, his final spark representing the last bit of hope I had for beating this level being extinguished. Even if I could take out the Master Ninja, the reinforcements from the other side of the level are now upon me, hastening my end. And with that, attempt 1 fizzles out of existence. Once Camilla fell, that was just like led to everything falling out. Maybe if I didn't do the Reina play, maybe I would have been able to get out of this. This chapter seems tough. Like, this is definitely the bit of... I remember just in normal Revelations, this is kind of like a difficulty spike. This chapter's kind of annoying. So... I guess that's where we're at. Guess that's that! Well, I mentioned that this chapter is a little spike in difficulty. I honestly don't think it would have been that bad had I not made like 3 terrible plays in a row. I'm definitely considering doing another attempt. Maybe I'll stream it as well, who knows. I'm pretty confident that if I mitigate the number of small errors I make, this challenge will be more doable. It's just that small errors result in very punishing results, which is what I actually enjoyed about this challenge. I honestly didn't know what to expect going in, but I was happily surprised at the unique way having this explosion mode made me play. I think towards the middle of the run things got a little dull, but that's more of a Revelations thing than a problem with the challenge. But yeah, not much more to say. If you're interested in more of my content, well, you're kinda out of luck. This is my first YouTube project that I've ever worked on. Depending on how motivated I am, I might continue making little, okay, not so little videos here and there. And they might not be solely centered around Fire Emblem. I love the franchise, but it's far from the only one I'm interested in. So if you liked what you saw, maybe stick around for some variety. I know sticking to one lane is probably the way to go if I want any success on YouTube. This is obviously more of a hobby than anything, so I guess I don't really care. By the way, thanks for making it to the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed.